Hello and welcome, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has announced that he will block Israel's West Bank annexation plans, declaring that it is not going to happen. He's also signaled that progress on a deal as far as Gaza is concerned is underway and has hinted at a possible peace agreement. Yemen's Huthis have claimed that Israeli airstrikes have killed 2 and wounded 48 in Sanaa. They've slammed the attack as brutal, even as civilian casualties mount in the rebel-held capital amid escalating tensions. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has signed an executive order to sell TikTok's US operations to American and global investors, valuing the deal at $14 billion. The move aims to address national security concerns with key investors like Michael Dell and Rupert Murdoch involved. Former FBI Director James Comey has denied criminal charges, claiming innocence after indictment for false statements and obstruction. President Trump has celebrated his indictment, calling Comey one of the worst, and has urged further action against other critics. The US President has announced a 100% tariff on branded and patented pharma imports starting from the 1st of October. New duties also target kitchen cabinets, furniture and heavy trucks as part of his latest trade move aimed at boosting domestic manufacturing in the US. Russian President Vladimir Putin has met the IAEA chief Rafael Grossi in Moscow to discuss nuclear energy, non-proliferation and safety. Grossi has expressed gratitude for the support, highlighting ongoing efforts in nuclear security and global cooperation on energy challenges. Donald Trump has met Turkish President Erdogan at the White House and has urged Turkey to stop buying oil from Russia amid the war in Ukraine. Trump has also discussed sanctions, F-35 fighter jets and Turkey's influence over Moscow in the recent conflict. The first formal trial of South Korean former President Yoon Suk-yeol has opened in the South Korean national capital Seoul. He faces charges of obstructing official duties and abuse of power linked to last year's martial law crisis. In his first appearance in 85 days after missing previous hearings on health grounds, with that, we begin our special coverage of the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. The United Nations is marking its 80th anniversary as the global community grapples with major challenges, from the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine to the escalating threat of climate change. Meanwhile, we are getting comments from the US President Donald Trump, who has now drawn a red line against Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Speaking ahead of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the UNGA, Trump has stated that he will not allow Israel to move forward with their annexation plans. In fact, in order to help us understand these developments, I'm joined by our correspondent Thomas Portes, who's currently in New York City. We had the opportunity to catch up with him earlier as well. Thomas, at the outset, I would like to ask you, what does Donald Trump's statement that he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank tell us about how he views the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, yes, a huge development coming from the Oval Office today. As we stand here in New York, as the third day of the UNGA comes to a close, Donald Trump has said that he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which some critics of the Israeli government has said that has been in their plan all along. Today started with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas speaking through a remote call where he said that he is willing to work with the US president who denied him his visa in order to bring an end to the war in Gaza. Now, he did say that that Israel is perpetrating war crimes against Palestine and, of course, used the word genocide while doing this. But of course, he was speaking from Ramallah, where in Palestine, which has seen huge Israeli settlers come in to into the region, which the United Nations does see as breaking international law. But yes, this is a huge development coming out of the White House. Donald Trump possibly backing the Palestinian movement and saying that he will not, in fact, allow Benjamin Netanyahu's government to annex the West Bank.
Indeed, and Thomas, could you explain us a little bit about the background about the alleged plans for Israel to annex the West Bank?
Well, of course, this comes as the war in Gaza is reaching its second year now, come October the 7th, where Hamas attacked Israel, killing over 1,000 Israelis and taking over 200 people hostage. This was a fundamental event that has started this war. However, the images coming out of the Gaza Strip and the ongoing conflict has now left over 63,000 Palestinians dead, which has led to global condemnation towards the Israeli government. However, multiple vetoes in the United Nations Security Council solely from the United States. However, this is a breakthrough when it comes to Donald Trump acknowledging that perhaps Benjamin Netanyahu's actions and vision of a quote-unquote greater Israel is one step too far for him and his government. This also comes after Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, many of whom see as an extreme far-right member of his government, approved an E1 expansion plan of settlements in the West Bank, which would effectively split the territory in two, ending the idea of a Palestinian state, which Mahmoud Abbas in his speech today said was, at the end of the day, the end goal here. Well, of course, this is a huge development, Donald Trump stating this, and we will, of course, bring you all the updates as soon as we get them.
And Thomas, speaking of Netanyahu, how significant are Trump's talks with the Israeli Prime Minister on Gaza, and what might this signal about his broader approach to the conflict in the Middle East?
Okay, as well as this, of course, Donald Trump has announced that he has had good talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he says that talks on a Gaza ceasefire looks, quote-unquote, good overall. Now, Donald Trump is very cryptic in his statements, as we know, for the past over 6 months of his presidency now, and he in the past few days has met with Arab leaders in the backdrop of the UNGA and has met with the Qataris, the Turkish notably, today in the Oval Office with President Erdogan, and has said that he is working actively to achieving that ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We will see if that does come to fruition.
All right, Tom, and last question. What is expected from the Israeli Prime Minister's visit to New York tomorrow?
Yes, now, of course, as you've said, Benjamin Netanyahu is set to speak here first thing tomorrow morning here in New York City, where there is expected to be mass protests throughout the city. This comes in spite of an ICC warrant against the Israeli leader, where there is global condemnation against him and his actions in the Gaza Strip. There has been lines of people in support of Mahmoud Abbas today as he spoke to that General Assembly Hall throughout his remote address. But of course, we will be bringing you all of that here first on NewsX World.
Absolutely, viewers. That was Tom bringing us the latest from New York. Meanwhile, we're tracking further developments. We're now learning that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has addressed the United Nations General Assembly via video conferencing and has delivered a strong message on Hamas and the future of a Palestinian state. The Palestinian leader has condemned Israel's military actions, which, as he states, goes beyond aggression and amounts to crimes against humanity that will be recorded in history as one of the darkest chapters of human suffering. In his UNGA speech, Abbas has also distanced himself from Hamas, rejecting its October 7th attacks on Israeli civilians and hostage-taking. He has further stressed that solidarity with Palestinians should never be confused with anti-Semitism. Listen in.
فإننا نرفض ما قامت به حركة حماس في 7 أكتوبر من أعمال استهدفت المدنيين الإسرائيليين وأخذهم رهائن، لأن هذه الأفعال لا تمثل الشعب الفلسطيني ولا نضاله العادل من أجل الحرية والاستقلال. ونرفض الخلط بين التضامن مع القضية الفلسطينية ومسألة معاداة السامية، والتي نرفضها انطلاقا من قيمنا ومبادئنا. ولن يكون لحماس دور في الحكم، حيث يتوجب عليها وغيرها أيضا من الفصائل تسليم سلاحها للسلطة الوطنية.
Additionally, the Palestinian leader has pledged to work with the United Nations, US President Donald Trump and other countries including Saudi Arabia and France on a significant peace plan. Remember, earlier this month, the 193-member General Assembly overwhelmingly endorsed a 7-page declaration that called for a two-state solution and an end to the war in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has reacted sharply to Abbas's UNGA speech and has taken to X to describe the Palestinian leader's remarks as diplomatic rhetoric and even criticized his ability to govern Palestine. Shifting focus to more updates coming in from within the United States of America, the U.S. Justice Department has filed criminal charges against former FBI Director James Comey in a dramatic escalation of U.S. President Donald Trump's retribution campaign against his political enemies. If convicted, Comey could face up to 5 years in prison. He faces charges of making false statements and obstructing a congressional investigation. Comey has responded to this, and listen in to what he had to say.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
Meanwhile, President Trump has hailed the criminal indictment of James Comey, his former FBI director, proclaiming that justice has been delivered in America. Trump has stated that, quote unquote, one of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey. He's called him the former corrupt head of the FBI. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist joining us from New Delhi. Thank you, sir, for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. How do you view this indictment that has taken place? A lot of critics have stated that Trump is on a campaign against his political enemies.
Well, yes. Comey was very effective in persecuting, if not prosecuting, Trump during the election campaign, basically to do with the attack on the Capitol, which he is accused of instigating. His supporters stormed the building and injured people, even killed one or two. So Comey has been, I think, as the head of the FBI, legitimately after Trump, though Trump denies having instigated the riots, he only said that the elections were rigged and he was unfairly not allowed to win 4 years ago. So, having said all that, I think in the trial, Comey is most likely to be acquitted rather than sent to jail, because I think he was only doing his job. And if that came to trouble Trump during his campaign days or during the 4 years in between the last time he was president and this time, then, that is Trump's cross to carry. I'm sure he's on a vendetta against all the people who are against him, and Comey is one of them. However, I don't think that trial will convict Comey.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we continue to track further developments from the United States of America. We're now learning that US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order declaring his plans to sell TikTok's US operations to American companies. President Trump also stressed that the new framework for TikTok would meet the requirements outlined in the 2024 bipartisan law, which mandates that the video sharing app would be banned in the US unless its Chinese parent company ByteDance sells its US operations to American companies. Now, under the new framework, 6 out of 7 board members of TikTok would be American nationals. The app's algorithm is to be retained, and the data of American users will be stored on a cloud server managed by Oracle outside of ByteDance's control. President Trump has highlighted that he held good talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping and that he appreciated the Chinese president's approval of this deal. Listen in.
So this is interesting because I had a very good talk with President Xi. A lot of respect for him. Hopefully he has a lot of respect for me too. And we talked about TikTok and other things, but we talked about TikTok and he gave us the go-ahead. You know, it's run by American investors and American companies, great ones, great investors, the biggest. You don't get bigger, I don't imagine. It's very good and very meaningful, but we have American investors taking it over, running it, highly sophisticated, including Larry Ellison. And Oracle, I guess, is going to play a very big role in terms of security, safety, and everything else. So we have very good control.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also stated that the primary objective of the order is to protect the data privacy of American users. He hailed the executive order and the new framework within which TikTok is about to function, stating that after the agreement, American users can use the app with more confidence. Take a look.
We really couldn't have done this without the president actually ushering this deal over the finish line. There was some resistance on the Chinese side, but the fundamental thing that we wanted to accomplish is that we wanted to keep TikTok operating, but we also wanted to make sure that we protected Americans' data privacy as required by law, both because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's a legal requirement of the law that was passed last year by Congress. So we think that we were able to do that. Of course, we're going to keep on working at it, but this deal really does mean that Americans can use TikTok, but actually use it with more confidence than they had in the past, because their data is going to be secure and it's not going to be used as a propaganda weapon against our fellow citizens. We're very excited about it. We appreciate the cooperation of everybody involved, and it's a big day.
With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, joining us from New Delhi. Sir, this is an era in which data is invaluable. Oftentimes, it's being used by tech titans to train large language AI models. There are 170 million American users of TikTok. So in light of that, what implications does this particular deal have for the larger US-China tech war?
Well, certainly data privacy is a case in point, and by more or less wrestling this very successful app away from the Chinese and into American hands, with Americans in charge of the data on their cloud, which they will control, is a plus without doubt in terms of the American position. But it is also a very lucrative deal. This Chinese app has been built up from nothing into a valuable asset, and to be able to take this over at a good price and henceforth grow it under American control and by American business is, a typical Trump deal. It is good for America, good for MAGA, and so maybe China doesn't like it, but the option was probably to close it down, leave America, which was being spoken of at one point in time before Trump was better advised, and he has pushed this into American hands. I think it's a win-win for America.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we track further developments from Washington. Donald Trump has announced tariffs of up to 100% on imports of branded and patented pharmaceutical drugs starting from the 1st of October. Trump has stated that companies building manufacturing plants in the United States will be exempt, with building being defined as breaking ground or under construction. The move could hit India's pharmaceutical sector hard, as America is India's largest export market, accounting for nearly $9 billion worth of products last year, including over 45% of generic drugs used in the United States. Firms like Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo and Zydus could face pressure, although large players already have US facilities. Higher tariffs may in fact push up drug prices, cause shortages and impact American consumers. Trump has also announced duties, meanwhile, on kitchen cabinets, furniture and heavy trucks, citing national security and domestic manufacturing concerns. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist from New Delhi. Interesting developments coming in. We're now learning that Gland Pharma, Zydus and Aurobindo shares have fallen up to 4% as of now. As I mentioned earlier, India's pharma sector does have a high dependency on US buyers. Nearly 45% of generic drugs in the United States are from India. They're manufactured in India. But what's interesting is also the language that has been used in Trump's order. He has particularly spoken about imports of branded and patented pharmaceutical drugs. So is this likely to hit India's pharma sector rather hard, or will the dent not be quite as much as we're anticipating?
Well, the way things are going, he'll probably put tariffs on generic drugs as well, though they may not be at 100% like he has done with the patented and the branded ones. There are also various areas which are not clear at present, such as, for example, Sun Pharma makes one of 21 of its products in their facility in the US. So does this mean that only the one which is made in the US will be exempted and the other 20 will be tariffed? We don't know yet. When he talks of a facility, is it a manufacturing facility he wants, or is it a repackaging facility like some people have put in on US soil? So this detail will have to come out. But all in all, it is yet another challenge to Indian business imposed by the Trump administration. And while, when you have this coming at you thick and fast, it will make us nimble. It will make us find other markets. For example, the present 50% tariffs have led to shrimp exporters now unable to send it to America at these high tariff rates. They are sending it instead, they're selling it to China. So new markets will have to be found, but there is disruption for a while. There is lack of clarity as well. But the intent from the Trump administration is to pretty much tariff everything. And while trade negotiations are going on, they're going very slowly and will, as India hopes, once the trade negotiations are concluded for the interim deal, all these extra tariffs come off, or will they stay and vitiate the atmosphere? We really don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, and India is having to rise to the challenge.
Absolutely, sir. And we are also yet to see how exactly will the American consumers also bear the brunt of this healthcare. In the United States is already expensive, and this is most likely going to push the prices up. Thank you so much for taking our time, speaking to us on NewsX World, sharing your perspective on these crucial developments. Viewers, we're tracking further updates from the United States. We're now learning that US President Donald Trump has urged his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan to stop buying Russian oil over the war in Ukraine, even as Erdogan seeks a long-awaited deal to buy US fighter jets. Listen in to what Trump and Erdogan had to say.
Usually I don't like opinionated people, but I always like this one. But he's a tough one, and he does an amazing job in his country. And we've had tremendous relationships, both having to do with war and having to do with trade. And I guess today we're talking about both. I'd like to have him stop buying any oil from Russia while Russia continues this rampage against Ukraine. We do a lot of trade with Turkey, and we're going to continue. We're going to do some additional trade. They want to buy F-16s, F-35s, and some other things, and we're going to talk to them about that. And we're just going to have, I think, a very interesting couple of hours. We're going to get a lot done.
Sayın Trump'ın birinci döneminde gerekse ikinci dönemde Türkiye-Amerika ilişkilerinde farklı bir süreci yaşıyoruz. Kendilerinin de az önce ifade ettiği gibi gerek F-35 konusu, gerek F-16 konusu, gerekse Halk Bankası'yla ilgili aramızdaki ilişkiler konusunu bugün etraflıca görüşme fırsatı bulacağımıza.
Meanwhile, Trump has stated that the US sanctions on Turkey's defense sector over its purchase of Russian missiles could end almost immediately if talks with Erdogan goes well. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus back to New York. My colleague Thomas Porteous is joining us once again, sharing the latest. Take a look.
Hello, this is Thomas Porteous, and you are watching NewsX World live here from New York City as we cover the United Nations General Assembly and its third day. You're joining us here for all the action, all the drama, and of course, all the high-level diplomacy. Now, as you can see behind me, we are at the United Nations HQ, where the world's press gathers to try and capture all the events, every single moment that unfurled in front of us. Of course, today has been a huge day when it comes to leaders speaking. We have had Mahmoud Abbas, the president of Palestine, who joined in through a video link. He highlighted the pros of Palestine liberation, of course. This follows Monday's session of many countries recognizing a Palestinian state for the first time. After that, we had the Yemeni leader who once again pressed for a more stable Middle East following Mahmoud Abbas's address. Now, of course, we have much to come. This is the third day of the United Nations General Assembly. However, what is most anticipated is tomorrow, where we have the likes of tomorrow opening with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, he is set to address the General Assembly despite an international criminal court arrest warrant against him, a member, a body which is set up by this very organization. And so there is expected to be huge protests outside this building right here. And of course, many countries that have taken that stand inside that General Assembly hall have displayed dismay for the actions of the Israeli army and the Israeli government when it has come to their conduct in the war in Gaza. So that will be extremely fascinating and will be incredible to see how that does unfold. We also have Great Britain, who are speaking tomorrow. Sir Keir Starmer is expected to take the stand and push for European security and also, of course, higher defence spending. This, of course, comes amidst British support for Ukraine and heightened aggression, especially in the eastern part of Europe. Of course, this has been at the forefront of the European project for a long time recently. I forgot to mention this afternoon we have the European Council Chief Antonio Costa speaking. So yes, just giving you a rundown in what is going on here and what is also we have yet to look forward to coming out of here in New York City.
All right, that was Thomas reporting to us from New York. But due to paucity of time, we must wrap up this bulletin here. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.